Hey, it's KR talking today about the players discovering an abandoned cottage. And, you take this simple concept, and then I'm going to put some, qualifiers here because what I'm going for is both designing an adventure around something that the players come across, whether they've heard about it or just stumble across it. Thinking about the ramifications of the players investigating this, because that's what good players do. They investigate things. They look at it, see what they see. They ask you questions as a GM. They interact with the physicality of your world. And then also how this sort of illustrates a lot of storytelling and counter design RPG concepts in something that is, what seems to be very simple. So what I propose is that the players come across a cottage in a place in the middle of the woods, let's say far from everything, right? So whoever built this cottage did not, and maybe at the time that it was built, it was near something else, but now it is in this isolated place. We've all seen these, maybe there was a mine somewhere, maybe there was a homestead somewhere, whatever it is, and now it's abandoned and there's nothing around. But unlike a real world cottage that's abandoned, which would just be ruined, it's perfectly preserved. It looks as though someone were there today. So when the players come across this cottage, they're going to think, first off, well, who lives here? Where are they? They must have just left. But as they investigate, hanging around, looking at things, maybe they find journals, maybe they find something that dates it. It's clear that no one has been here in a very long time. And yet the cottage looks, well kept. It's not ruined. It's not weathered. It looks as though someone has been maintaining it. So that's our hook. You figure out a way to establish that this has been here a long time. For instance, locals that know about this or have heard about it, and they know it might be 25 miles from where they live, but they know about this cottage and they say, you don't want to go there. That place is haunted, right? Whether it is or isn't, because it is preserved. And people go there, have gone there to spend the night, let's just say, as an emergency cottage, and bad things have happened to them. Or they just don't dare do it because of the legend itself. Maybe it's just that. But the point is, you're making it clear that this cottage, and again, you can make it magic. The whole place is magic if you want. But this cottage always appears perfectly preserved, and yet it has been abandoned for a very, very long time. This is going to intrigue the players. This is going to make them really investigate, look at everything. What is the deal here? First of all, is it magical? Where is the magic centered? What kind of magic is here? Divine, arcane, is it, depending on your system, good or evil? Right away, they're investigating. And it just sits there as a mute totem, whether or not you want to have documents in there that talk about things, a diary, books, whatever it is. And again, these books are in an ancient language. Everything, speaks to a time a long time ago. How could it be preserved? How could it be there? So, and then you go into some of the ideas that you may have about why this cottage is perfectly preserved. So one of the most obvious that I'll just sort of get out of the way, but it could be something, is a super giant mimic. The entire cottage is a mimic. And when someone goes in there, it waits for them to go to sleep or whatever and swallows them up or, attacks them. Okay. That's a possibility. Fine. Not that interesting to me because then it's just fighting the mimic, but whatever. Okay. So, again, you could have it's some kind of magical force or whatever that you come in here and you become part of the cottage and it attacks you in some way, such that there are pictures on the walls of adventuring groups, the victims that have been absorbed, and their personalities are part of that. And then you can get into parts of their personalities are still here. They almost seem like ghosts, but they're actually not. They're giving clues as to how to defeat this magic item or this entity or whatever it is to release them. And there's now the ideas start to flow. So I'm not saying it isn't something that the cottage itself is again, the mimic is kind of one of those monsters. I've never been a super fan of it, but I prefer something more like an entity which occupies a structure, preserving it with its magic power in order to absorb the life forms that come into it, because they're drawn to a cottage or in the middle of the woods. It sees this as good bait, like the angler fish, dangling it. So that's cool. And that could be something that, a living cottage or whatever. And once the creature is destroyed, it returns to, it either is completely illusory or it returns to its true state, which is a, 300-year-old ramshackle, broken down cottage. It's the magic force that enhances it. And there should be clues to that, and there should be things that start to happen. The other thing that this could be, I've used this a million times, a gateway kind of thing where when you go inside the cottage, at first the doors are open, the windows are open. If you close them, suddenly there are doorways and things that lead to a much larger area. And it is a gateway, again, magically maintained. You may have to close all the windows, or you may have to find a key to open the back. There's a door in back that just seems to go outside with a lock, held with an arcane spell. And you have to find a key or some way to get through it, and you enter another place. And notice, too, the preservation aspect. If it's an entity that's here to take in life forms, if it's a gateway, a magic gateway, there's something that is preserving this. Because another concept here is, and this gets a little, this is some creature, whether powerful or not, where it has a memory of this place, and this memory, and again, whether they're being held in a stasis thing, or they're just off doing whatever, or they're sleeping or slumbering beneath, however you want to put it, but this memory is magically enhanced such that this cottage is here. And all the memories of this period when this entity lived here are preserved in this cottage. And so you begin to look through the documents and whatever, you begin to see things. And then the players then start interacting with these memories, and they come to life. And they might be good memories, bad memories, things come into existence. Now, when I think about the players, that's happening to the players, I often think about, well, what's the encounter going to look like on the ground? How big is it? Because we think of a cottage as small. You can have a big cottage. But it's something that will appear out in the little area. Because, again, the grounds could be really well maintained, too. A fire pit, a table, some logs out there, whatever, a well or something. Who knows what it could be. But, again, these things that start coming up from the memories of this entity. And maybe the entity's irritated that someone is intruding on its dreams. But, again, maybe it's being held against its will. And it's just hung on to this one, idyllic memory to hang on to its sanity. Right. And it also could be a dream that it's having, a dream that just goes on and on. And then if you get into the dream, you get into dream logic. And I don't want to go on, I'll probably do a video on this because it's such a complicated topic, the dream state, where things just happen and people just appear and whatnot. And players are pretty savvy. They'll figure that out pretty quickly. Am I in a dream? Is this a dream state? We're in a collective dream state. But again, the idea that this is either a memory or a dream or some kind of mental manifestation of something that is being held against its will or refuses to die or something like that. The other idea that this is a manifestation of what happens when you have a very powerful enchantment, let's say at a wish level, where someone wishes that their cottage should remain perfectly preserved until they return from X, or until some promise is kept, or until something, happens. Now, wish magic is tricky. So I say this with, the caveat that, because I don't know how often you hand out wishes. In modern D&D, they're pretty rare, if ever. The old days, we had them all the time. But today they're pretty, reality altering magic. But what happens when you wish that something stays the same? And the other element here is the players could come investigate this and not be able to figure it out and just move on, right? And things just stay the same. But when you enter this place, you also stay the same. So you go in here and you think you're doing things, and then you begin to realize that we've been just sort of here not doing anything. It's some kind of like time has stopped. Well, I'm not saying they just stop. Maybe you're conscious, but it's like you realize when you go outside the cottage that was really weird. Because again, this might be, you also could have, the area around all overgrown. You see the remains of a well and a fire pit and tables and furniture. It's all been just weathered away. But the cottage itself is perfectly preserved by this wish. I wish until I get back, you will maintain my childhood home forever, and it's just done. What are the ramifications? You don't age. Can you stay there? But can things come in and attack you in this state? Because you just go in, or you just frozen? You're free to leave, but you can go in there and just be there. Would there be things there? I mean, again, the mind reels, right? The concept here is you've got this dwelling, this cottage that's perfectly preserved, but no one's preserving it. It's doing this on its own or through some magic. So the wish concept lends itself to another aspect of something that is preserved or stays the same. It's like a photograph. And in that image, this sort of what I call a temporal displacement. It's outside of time, right? When you see a photo of yourself at 12, there you are at 12. And everyone around you is at the age they were. And everything looks that way. The cars look that way. Everything when you go into this place is of that time period. Now, how does this affect the play? When I'm thinking of these things, I tend to think that you go into this place and this temporal displacement, if you don't find the right things or whatever, when you step back outside, you're in that time period. You got to be careful with putting the players back in time, right? You got to maybe give them some warning on this, maybe give them some clues. And maybe they can, through something, maybe there's a photo book in here where you can go back to some time that you have. I mean, I'm just spitballing here, right? I'm going off the idea that this is preserved, time in one moment, like a photograph. Is it just, oh, well, that's cool, I'm just going to leave now, it's perfectly preserved? Maybe it was a wish thing or something like that. Or is it something that can either be manipulated by the players or manipulated by the force that was its one happy moment, like a ghost or some entity. And if you step into it, you're going to become part of that. You're going to become part of this time. And if you leave without completing some task or discovering some solving a puzzle or something like that, you're in that time. You're in that time. Now, do you want the players to go to some far off place, go on time, have to come all the way back to the city, realize, oh my God, we're 100 years in the past. We got to go back to the cottage. You want to explain that to them somehow. You want to say you're in a temporal distortion in this place. And again, then the cottage itself, they can leave, all the surrounding area, this cottage is now part of this town that was there. See? This town that had long ago faded away. So now the players go and they investigate and they find out what happened 100 years ago in this town to cause this person to create this temporal distortion of this cottage that's now still there perfectly preserved. I just said that very fast because I'm thinking very fast. That could be a really cool adventure. And that creates something for the players they investigate this, which is what they want to do. They, when you run into players that don't they see some, they defeat some foes and they never check all their bodies, or they go into a place and they never really look at stuff. You're thinking, wow, I mean, that's how when you're out as an adventurer, you're an investigator to keep yourself alive, but also to find stuff, cool stuff, clues to treasure, the solving of puzzles, all that stuff is investigation. When you put them in a temporal displacement, right? And where they're now back in time, they got to figure out what's going on. And that can be really fun. And all that started just from the idea of the players find an abandoned cottage that's perfectly preserved. Quick shout out to my Patreon supporters. I created another dragon in my dragon series, really fun. Love to hear some of your ideas. You ever had any of this or an abandoned structure that is perfectly preserved? And again, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Most importantly, my friends, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose. Tell somebody else about it.